feeling like you wasted time, right? Was this a mistake going to law school? That is something that I hear so often. I hear it a lot from lawyers, but it just reminds me of God working everything together for good
Yes.
and how he's never going to see something as wasted time because he's going to use it for the good of his people and the good of his kingdom. Hello, and welcome back to Answer the Call podcast, where we help Christians faithfully discern their calling and then translate that into a practical career. Today is one of the best kinds of days on the podcast because I get to share a success story, and I have the beautiful and amazing Lauren with me. Kelsey and I actually used to call you Lawyer Lauren because we had a couple Laurens floating around, so that was your nickname that we had for you. That's besides the point. Lauren is a former judicial clerk turned policy manager, where in this new job, she gets to lead her organization's state and local advocacy efforts, which includes, but I'm sure is not limited to, developing policy campaigns, conducting research and analysis, coordinating coalition building initiatives, all for the purpose of advancing housing, land use, local governance, and transportation priorities. I wanted to say, like, I hope I land that, but I read that straight from the job description, so I know I landed. And today we get to hear all about how your journey to landing that job. So, hi. So
Hello.
excited to have you here.
Yeah, it's so fun to be here. I keep saying this, but it just feels like an Ebenezer moment of, the last year of conversation together, and frankly, years of prayer and years of spinning my wheels in my own head. So, yeah, I'm so thankful to be here and be able to point to just success and God's provision.
Mm, amen. Well, your story is such a powerful example of being a high achiever, high performer, but how painful that can be when you're misaligned in career paths.
Yes,
So,
totally.
let's jump into how all of this worked out for you.
Yeah.
So, tell me, from the very beginning, I guess the beginning of this story is where were you at? Like, what was your mindset before starting coaching? What was going on in your career?
Yes, I have tried several different things over the years. I was a journalist. I was a journalism major in undergrad. Then I decided to go to law school because I wanted to move from just storytelling to actually working on social impact projects and using those skills in research and writing and relationship building in more of an impactful way. But then I went to law school and felt pretty lost about how it was that I wanted to apply that education. And there are a lot of pathways with a law degree that don't feel values aligned for me, don't feel like the right fit. And throughout law school was just, again, trying lots of different things on, from criminal defense work to civil rights work, and then some housing law work as well. But the things that energized me most were the projects that were working on really entrenched, complex challenges and bringing lots of different stakeholders to the table, and then getting to use my previous skills in research and writing. But throughout law school, and then when I took a judicial clerkship after graduating law school, I still was just spinning my wheels about what it was that I wanted to do and how I wanted to apply my skills and gifts and education. And I think I didn't reach out to a coach sooner because I thought that I could do it on my own. I I'm very practiced in self-reflection and self-awareness and like prayer and discernment and community, and like thank goodness I have such faithful friends who have been along for the journey, and my mom who I'd be calling and be like, I don't really know what it is that I'm doing, and was feeling, I think, some like loneliness in the sadness around like the sunk cost of going to law school. Like I think feeling like, oh shoot, did I make a mistake? Like, was this pathway, or like the last 3 years and then taking the bar and then taking this first job out of law school, like, is this wasted time? Is this wasted effort? And really just wanted to include somebody else in that conversation to combat the lies that I was believing, the kind of cyclical thought processes that were going on, and someone who could help me synthesize all of the things that I was thinking about, like really assess my values, really name very specific prayers together, and to have somebody that would yeah, just like encourage and support me through the process, and help me be accountable as I have just, like I said, not jumped into the next thing just for fear of it being the wrong thing, but somebody who would help me move towards the next right thing. Um, and I can confidently say I could not have done everything that has transpired over the last year without you, and without the support of so many friends and people in my life that have been so prayerful, and helpful as I've been discerning what comes next. And I think just having the systems to reflect and refine what feels like a calling, and then to actually take specific action steps towards that has been amazing, invaluable, so grateful. Um, so I can't believe that I held myself back for so long from including someone else in the conversation. I think it was probably pride. And like you said,
Mhm.
I think, yeah, being somebody who has been self sufficient and done hard things on my own for a number of years. Um, yeah. And so I think in that humility, and I think it's been so cool now to, I could do this on my own, but then God wouldn't receive as much glory. Like there's just so much that has been, yeah, I look back on all of our work together and just see God's handiwork in all of it, that I wouldn't be able to tell the same story if not for this journey we've been on together. So that is a long-winded way of saying it took me a while to get to coaching, but once I did, best decision ever.
That is such a good way to put it. So well said, especially that part about like if you had done it on your all on your own, God it wouldn't have received the same kind of glory. That's amazing, and I see that so often in the stories that I get to see unfold for people of how I truly just am in awe of how God works, and we get to share that on this podcast, share that with other people in the community, and beyond that. So amazing way to say that. And I want to go back to what you said about the feeling like you wasted time, right? Was
Hmm.
this a mistake going to law school? That is something that I hear so often. I hear it a lot from lawyers. I hear it from people in all different ways, right? But it just reminds me of God working everything together for good,
Yes.
and how he's never going to see something as wasted time because he's going to use it for the good of his people and the good of his kingdom. And I think that's a really beautiful way to look at it. But it's so hard when you're in it, right? And you're trying to make those decisions. And oh my gosh, should I just waste 3 years doing this, then another 3 years doing this job? I totally get that. So it makes sense you were in that space. Tell me more about like what it felt like being in this kind of stuck but self-aware.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think, um, yeah, I think loneliness was kind of the thing that I said
Mhm.
earlier, where I was internalizing so much, right? Like, yes, I was self aware. Yes, I was reflecting. And I was certainly like, I was having informational interviews, but primarily they were with folks within like traditional legal pathways, right? So I was thinking, okay, because I have a JD, I wasn't thinking about the versatility of the degree or thinking about all of the different skills, or things that had arisen throughout my time in law school and prior to that that would lead to a different career pathway that's sort of JD advantage, as folks say. I was talking to a lot of people who just were attorneys, but not really getting a chance to think creatively, and then just reflecting on it on my own, and just hitting roadblocks. And so I think I was doing a lot of the same processes that then you and I got a chance to engage with together. But I was doing it in a way that was not really making any progress because it was some process of elimination, but ultimately still thinking inside the box instead of, and like um, limiting beliefs and like limiting ideas around like what could come next. And so, yeah, that's kind of what it felt like to be self-aware, but also stuck.
Yeah, absolutely. I think naming it as lonely is so real because then the questions of, wow, am I broken? Did God make a mistake in my story? Like those questions, really, really dark questions, come up. And I'm not saying that's what you've said, but I've said that about my own story.
Yeah.
And I hear that from people in that same space of, why can I not figure this out? Kind of going back to what you said earlier of, um, you tried it on your own. It's like
Yeah.
I know how to self-reflect. I know how to do these things. So why can't I figure this out? And having that formal process and that external brain, which I try to
Yeah.
be, is so helpful. I also say that from a place of having gone through that myself, also being someone who loves self-reflection and at one point seeking out career coaching, which is how I ended up here. That's a different story.
Yeah.
Um, so I hear you on that.
Yeah.
So when you did come into this formal coaching process, what were some tools or moments that did lead to small breakthroughs or big breakthroughs?
Hmm.
Anything on that spectrum?
Yeah. Well, one thing I will say, just to tack on to what you were saying, like I think just the kind of naming where you're at, like I think we see this happen in so many spaces in our faith and life outside of vocation, but like that confession and just like naming things and like including other people in on your internal dialogue, like that leads to freedom ultimately. And so I think like that, just beginning there of like, what are my fears, like what has been holding me back from trying something new, um, and starting to include other people in that conversation, just echoing what I was just saying. But I think that felt huge. And then I think it's crazy looking back on my notes from the kind of step one reflections, because there's so much specificity in there about things that I like hoped and prayed for that now this new role matches like almost identically. So I don't know if I'm answering your question as far as like a particular step in the process, but I think holistic, like all of it, to really get to a point where I had clarity that then led to confidence, because for so long I didn't really have specific language wrapped around what I was looking for, or like I didn't have maybe the like self worth or self confidence to name like, no, these are things that I'm really good at, and this is what I could bring to the table. Um, and I think some of those limiting beliefs had come from just feeling like kind of a black sheep in the legal world, or like black sheep a uh, in a JD program, where I think that had led me to believe like I'm different, therefore that is bad. But instead, I think one of the most meaningful takeaways is like I'm different, and like God has made me in these unique ways and like equipped me uniquely. Therefore, I can do something different than what might be the norm, and that like different is actually good, and different is a little scary, but is also like really exciting. And yeah, I think just all of that, just all of the kind of reframing of sort of the big questions that I had been having was invaluable. And then being able to take that into kind of step two of your process, um, and be able to really articulate that to folks that I was interviewing with, and be able to tell my story and like weave together all of my experiences, and why I would be equipped for some of the things that I was thinking about pivoting into is just really invaluable.
Yeah, absolutely. I was not gonna lie, I was holding back tears when you were talking about being different and how that's good because it's so that's the one of the toughest things about misalignment is really just feeling like an outsider or a black sheep. Like, what am I doing here? I must be wrong. I must have things wrong. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not fitting in, and that means something's wrong with me. I really believe that will speak to a lot of people listening to this podcast because I hear people say that in a lot of different ways. So thank you for sharing that. And something that you've mentioned before is your relational and communication skills was something that you lost some confidence in
Mm-hmm.
because you were in this behind the scenes role
Yeah.
for a while. And it was going through the informational interviews process that helped you remind it was the self-reflection and the informational interviews that helped you regain that confidence. Can you speak a little bit more to that journey?
Yeah, I think I know that I am wired for a relationship. Like that is just like that is what brings me the most joy is connecting with people, and I think that's what drew me to journalism was like relationship building with people and asking good questions and listening, and that has been reflected back to me by friends and family as being like my top strength over and over. But I think it feels like it shows up a lot in my personal life, but in my professional life, I think I have um, kind of strayed away from sort of putting myself in a position where I am meaningfully building relationships. And when I'm thinking about this, and not thinking about necessarily like building relationships with coworkers, like that's already something I was doing and will continue to do. But I just think about like building relationships in a meaningful way that will drive impact, or being in a leadership role, or like having a seat at the table and feeling like my voice matters. I think because I was feeling so kind of isolated in a season of searching, and also, yeah, doing a lot more like traditional lawyering desk work, just research and writing, and not in an advocacy role, I think I did kind of lose, at least in my professional life, the just my voice, or like my confidence in yeah, in communication and confidence in building relationships with people. And I think the scary thing of like beginning to network and beginning to conduct informational interviews with people to hear about the work that they're doing, and I think just having to, in vulnerability, share with them and ask questions of them, and yeah, really build a robust network. I think flex a muscle that had been sort of fatigued for a while. And yeah, it feels like I'm stepping into my next role with a, yeah, maybe a renewed connection to my voice, and yeah, just more comfort in scary relational situations, which I will have many of in a policy making, like coalition building role. And so I'm really grateful for pieces of even this experience, and just interviewing generally is gnarly and
Mhm.
not my favorite thing still, even though I
Yeah.
felt much more equipped just through this process to have interview conversations. But yeah, generally, I think I have like found where those gifts that people have acknowledged in my personal life are starting to show up in my professional life, and some of that is just renewed confidence too, and like a renewed voice.
Yeah, moving from that misalignment to alignment
Yeah.
and the confidence that naturally pours out of that. It's really cool to
Mm-hmm.
see. And I think you're doing a good job of painting this picture with the program, our program in specific of these building blocks. Like something in the beginning helped you build to that next step, that next step, that next step,
Yeah.
which is eventually land at a job. Because we talk to so many people, they're like, I have to pause job applications. I have to not interview right away. What do you mean? And some people don't get it and they move on to the next program, and that's fine. And some people are resistant, but they join anyways. And then some people, like you and me, are like, I will be in reflection all day long, no problem. But there is that value of building that like confidence, or time leads to confidence
Yeah.
as long as you're doing good things with that time. And I think you're articulating that very well with how starting off with fears was helpful to actually just confess what you were feeling and
Yeah.
what you were going through at that time. And then informational interviews helped you to start to kind of test the waters with those relational skills again, building towards those job interviews and ultimately landing a job that if you had immediately pivoted into that, it would be a really, really rough transition, probably.
Yeah, or like I think I maybe would have landed in the same role had I not gone through this process. Like that's
Mhm.
very likely. And also, like I said, like I wouldn't have the same clarity about it being the next right thing. And just yeah, confidence that it is aligned because I've done all of that work leading up to this
Yeah.
point. And a lot of process of elimination throughout this experience too, which we can chat about. That I think yeah, process of elimination in informational interviews of chatting with people about what they're doing and thinking that it might have been a good fit, and then really, really getting down to the nitty gritty of like, what are you doing with your time each day? Okay, wait, I don't know if that's how I'd want to spend 40 plus hours of my week. Um, and yeah, and then I think we talked a lot about like public sector innovation and consulting and nonprofit leadership and just trial and error through interviews with those organizations too. I think helped me see that a lot of those skill sets or a lot of the daily tasks in those roles I'll get to employ in the one that I'm now in that has a totally different title and description. And so, yeah, I think really helpful to go through the process of elimination through this experience
Mhm.
as well, and really see the fruit of that. Whereas, again, if I was just to, have seen this policy manager role posted around this time, applying, interviewing, securing the job, I think I might not have that same perspective and that same story that makes it so much more like meaningful and
Yeah.
so much more confidence around that decision.
Yeah, absolutely. There actually gets to be this moment with a lot of people that I work with where from the outside, the pivot doesn't look too dramatic. Lawyer to policy manager. Okay, cool. Great. I actually was laughing about this with someone last night. She's an OT and she came through our clarity program and now she's an OT in a different setting. And we were laughing about how, wow, from the outside, that doesn't look like a pivot at all. It's just the next step in your career. But that internal composure and what you're bringing to it is radically different. And that's what changes
Yeah.
your career and has an effect on your life. So that's so beautifully articulated from you. And the time thing, coming back to that, let's talk about the Lord's timing
Yes.
because the Lord's timing was not our timing in your journey. Can you and bring in the process of elimination that you were talking about here as well? Because we really were going after that consulting role. We're like,
Yeah.
this is it, social impact consulting. So clearly, this is it. Let's go for it. Lord's timing said otherwise, which eventually revealed this job that you're going into. So walk us through that timeline a little bit.
Yeah, well, the first thing I'd say is you joked earlier about like us being self-reflection girlies, and like I think
Mhm.
I'm not a model child of the cold career program because I think that the pace and like the not following steps in particular orders like don't do what I did, but also the Lord will be faithful in whatever whatever you're doing. But yeah, like I think I spent a lot of time in reflection before I launched myself into actually applying for roles. Um, and then in that, I was still employed during this time, so I wasn't in a rush to find the next right thing, but would be excited to pivot whenever that happened. But yeah, I think I applied for my first role in February. It's at the time of recording, it is mid-October, and I knew that my current role was going to wrap up naturally in mid-August. So yeah, I would have taken something prior to August, but also had no idea what was going to transpire. It can take people a very long time to secure a role. Statistically speaking, things went well. I was invited to interview with each of the organizations that I applied with. Um, and I think part of that was having a baller resume per being involved with
Thank
it
you,
as
Tim.
well. Um, and yeah, but I think experienced a lot of disappointment over that time, because I would make it to late stage interviews, feel like I was killing it, feel like I was creating really good relationships, and then just come short. And I think that is such a gift in retrospect because, again, I learned so much about myself through just preparing for those interviews and telling my story and asking questions of an organization to see if whether or not that's a place I would want to be. And I can see now God's faithfulness in those closed doors. But again, it was still, I created some anxiety of like, how long is this going to take? I like don't really know. Um, but yeah, just grateful that those didn't work out and that it helped refine the process. And then I got to like mid-August when I was leaving my previous role, and also I would say along the way, Audrey, I took some beats throughout the process just out of overwhelm of having a job and also job searching, which felt like a full-time job, and then just trying to be a human with other responsibilities in my life. And just felt the Lord's invitation to rest and to trust and to cease striving. So there were a lot of moments throughout the past year that I said, you know what, I'm going to take a week or two and just not search because work itself right now is really busy. Or I feel like I'm operating from scarcity and I'm just applying for this role just because I feel like I need something, but it doesn't really feel aligned. And I feel confident about that. So I think just listening to the Lord, listening to self throughout that meant that I took a lot of pauses. And then a real pause came when I, yeah, wrapped up my current job and decided, okay, doors haven't opened. I want to operate from abundance and fullness in making this next decision. And it would also be really nice to have a little bit of a break between opportunities because I was feeling some burnout. So I left my previous job without anything else lined up and was just prayerful that the Lord would provide and that whenever I jumped back into applying that that things would happen quickly. And I know that's not everyone's story, but at least for me, I had I casually applied for the role that I'm now stepping into. I wasn't even thinking about like I was gonna take 2 to 3 full months just off. And then happened upon this role and thought, let me just throw my hat in the ring, see what happens. And then things happened really quickly from there. And I accepted the job like 2 months to the day that I left my previous one, which is just crazy timing. So yeah, the Lord has been, I can't make this stuff up. Like the Lord has just been really faithful. Even when I have felt like I have needed a rest, and have needed just some more time to, just sit and trust and I think it has been again like a testament to him and not me in this process, just the timing of everything, and grateful for all that has transpired out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, you did the very scary thing of, okay, job's ending. I don't have something lined up. I'm going to lean back. I'm going to rest. That is not an easy decision. And of course, not a decision that everyone is able to have.
No, yeah,
But you are able to have it. And there are a lot of people who can, and who don't take it because it is scary. It is fully surrendering. It does, maybe there's failure that you feel involved in that as well, because we were told, of course, growing up, never, ever, ever leave a job without something else lined up, which there's a lot of good wisdom in that advice, but there's nuance and there's gray area too. So um, you did the hard thing. And then you got to rest and have some beautiful moments throughout that time. You realize, oh, maybe this actually wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to
no,
be.
it's actually so nice.
Yeah, like, oh, this is what sabbatical is. This is cool.
Yes.
And you casually applied to this job. Tell us more about the job. How does it align with what you discovered about your gifts and your calling and what you want to do in this world?
Yeah. Well, you described it so perfectly via the job description, but I will be the policy manager for a local nonprofit called Wasatch Advocates for Livable Communities. Salt Lake is, I think at this point in time, maybe the ninth most expensive housing market, if not higher than that at this point.
Wow.
And I've been following that issue just like personally since living here because, of course, would love to buy a house someday. But also just seeing housing as foundational for all other equity incomes that I care deeply about for people, and housing security and housing affordability just being so crucial to, yeah, just your life being a thriving, flourishing person, and caring deeply about people of all income levels feeling like they have a safe place to live. Um, and so that has been an issue that I've followed for a number of years. And I'm kind of a nerd about community development and urban planning and all of these things that like I don't have a degree or background in, but just has been an interest and really interested in sustainable growth and just like environmental impact of cities and all of these things that like I think I had named in the process of like um, passions, but I was like, is that just like a little side passion? Those are books I read, those are like podcasts I listen to, whatever. But like, is that something, are those issues I'm going to be working on? And like, by the grace of God, yes, which is really cool. And this policy manager role is really interesting. I don't have a background in like zoning ordinances and land use law and all of that. A lot of my housing law background is related to eviction and landlord tenant law, and but I think my legal training, and then again like all the relationship building skills that we've talked about like will be really helpful in a role that is primarily centered on developing relationships with elected officials and community leaders in increasing housing availability in my community, through like changes in law, but then also changes in attitude about what it looks like to make Utah a more livable place, for the most amount of people. And so it aligns with my desire to do meaningful social impact work, but also employ so many skills that I thought about along the way. And going back to what we were talking about with consulting, I think the reason I was drawn to that initially was because I just get really excited about approaching like entrenched complex issues and bringing lots of different thinkers to the table, to try to craft solutions. I really love getting into the nitty gritty of research, and there's so many pieces of consulting that feel like will get to be a part of this role, and providing some solutions to people who can actually make a difference. Um, and then I think, yeah, I even thought about public sector innovation and working on like government effectiveness work and um, are government leaders actually delivering on promises to communities? And I feel like those are all things that I'll get to dive into in this role. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think a lot of my previous experiences were about like driving social impact despite like obstacles, despite maybe distrust of one another or not thinking innovatively or whatever. And I think like it will be really neat to step into a role that allows me to, yeah, try these other new pieces out, but also building upon things that I've worked on in the past.
Oh, so cool. I could listen to you talk about how your passions align with this job all day long. So, question for you. That's what we're doing here. Um, what are some mindsets or ideas or things that were going through your mind that you had to let go to be able to finally accept or be able to even see this kind of job as a good fit?
Mm-hmm. I think one thing I'll say is not looking at the job description and immediately counting yourself out. Like, I think looking at what have been identified as the primary responsibilities of the role, and taking a beat and being like, oh, this thing that I've done in the past, it might not be completely on point, or it's adjacent to that, but I can articulate how this would equip me to step into this role and learn very quickly. And so I think kind of setting those limiting beliefs aside when you're looking at a role. And I think for me, going back to some of that like confidence related conversation too, looking at a leadership role with a high level of responsibility on a really like urgent issue in my community, I'm like, am I the girl for the job? I don't know, but like, we'll see, Lord. I think just setting those pieces aside. And then I think a policy related role was not something I think consulting felt safe. Like it felt like I could be like dropped in with a client for a number of weeks, months on a discrete project, and then and be able to execute on some of the things that they hope to deliver. But then I really wouldn't be tethered to what happened next. And that felt like safe, like the right amount of
Yeah.
responsibility in a project. But I think that also felt misaligned because then I wouldn't actually be able to see real impact over time, and like follow up. And instead, now I'm getting to work on something that is both affecting my life as well as the lives of so many people in my community, and actually getting to see fruit, hopefully, um, is yes, so much more. But I think having to set aside maybe fears of whether or not I was the girl for the job, which I think will still come up. Like I think some of these limiting beliefs that I think the Lord and I have worked on through this process, like will continue to come about. Um, and then I think just the idea that, yeah, it's kind of a non-traditional, even though it's very similar to work that a number of attorneys I know do. I think also setting aside maybe other people's thoughts about that pathway, or um, what it I don't know, maybe expectations, real or imagined, that I feel like other people might have for my career. So all of that, I feel like we're setting aside. We're putting it in a box. We're putting it in like the back drawer in a closet, and we're just gonna
And
move.
setting it on fire.
Yay! Literally. Um, yeah. So that makes me excited to see what comes next.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you didn't say these words exactly, but this is what I was hearing with the consulting being safe and this job just having a lot more responsibility tied to it, or feeling like there's a lot more responsibility in outcomes. It's almost that fear of being seen. Like in consulting, you could hide a little bit more. And now, girl, you're not hiding. You are out there, and the Lord is going to work wonders through that. And I think that's so beautiful. I also think that you're dropping wisdom right now. So let me ask you a couple more questions to draw out some more wisdom that I know you have. Tell me, what would you tell Lauren, you, this time last year?
Mm, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna
Yeah.
be okay. And you already know this, but God will work all things out for your good and His glory, and will do immeasurably more than you can ask or imagine. And like, why do you doubt that? Like, why? I don't know. Why do you think that when you pray specific prayers that those won't be answered? Like, yeah, God loves you and is for you and has been with you and will continue to be with you. And yeah, I would say just, yeah, so many of the fears that I was having, like the Lord has been so kind to mitigate and just remind me of his character. Um, and I'm not entitled to like any of this goodness, right? That is just abundance and joy. And but like, yeah, God does show up when we ask, seek, and knock, and um, yeah, are seeking His face and His voice, and um, yeah, there's goodness on the other side.
Oh, so sweet. So what would you then say to someone who's considering coaching? Maybe they're in the same kind of space of they feel like they should be able to figure it out. What would you say to that person?
Yeah, you might, you might, but also, like I was saying, even if you're the most like practice in self-awareness, like you've been talking to your friends and other, like you probably aren't thinking about the systems that a coach has in place. Like I would not have created so many of the systems that you and Kelsey have crafted, um, just for like organization and accountability sake. Like, so if nothing else, like just to have like a framework and some guardrails and some like helpful language and tool, like all of that. Like you're not doing that on your own. Like you might be chatting with people about career. You might be refining your resume. You might be like journaling in a meaningful way, but yeah, you're probably not doing these other things. And so helpful to me.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you for answering those questions. Thank you for being here, Lauren. I will forever be celebrating this journey with you. You are such a joy and a pleasure, and someone I genuinely believe is having a kingdom impact.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for being open to sharing your story, sharing your wisdom. We prayed beforehand that this would just be helpful for people out there, and I really believe that that's the case. So I pray that this reaches the person it needs to reach, and I'm so grateful to have had you on the podcast and in the program.
Yeah, thank you. I'm gonna miss you. And just hope that people feel less alone in their journey, and feel like encouraged to be not alone and to partner with somebody in this next season. So, especially,
So well said.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. To get an even more meaningful head start into your calling, head to thecalledcareer.com, where my fellow career coach Audrey and I have created a whole suite of free resources and tools to help you get clear and get a job today. For those who are definitely ready to land a job or start a business in the next 6 to 12 months, we're here to help you biblically and practically discern your calling through coaching, reflection, and deep market research. Identify the job that's aligned with it, even if you currently have no idea what you want. Rebrand your resume and LinkedIn to translate your background to appeal to your future boss. P.S. We take this off your plate and do this for you. Also, we'll teach you how to land referrals and get attention from leadership through networking. Again, if that makes you nervous, we have these emails and LinkedIn messages literally written for you so you don't have to sweat. We're also here to give you unlimited interview practice so you're prepared to address every elephant in the room and knock selling yourself out of the park. Then we'll round out with helping you negotiate your salary so you land thousands more. Just so you know, recent clients have gotten $8,000 to $50,000 salary increases, even though they were totally non-traditional candidates. That's because we specialize in helping non-traditional career pivoters land jobs they're ecstatic to serve in. It takes work, but we're here to see you through until the end, when we're celebrating that day that you send me an email in all caps and you say, Kelsey, I got the job. Then you could be on the podcast. But I'll be here until then, keeping you accountable and encouraged by meeting with you literally until you land the job you want, even if that's up to 6 months from now within our program. Apply to join at thecalledcareer.com, and I'll see you next week here at Answer the Call. Bye for now.